Hey everybody, Mike Amato here. Hey, thanks for joining in today, and also thanks to so many of you for subscribing. I really appreciate it. And more importantly, I've had some great interactions with some of you that help me refine the content and choose topics that are going to be most relevant for you. Maybe some questions that you might have. So from time to time, you'll hear your questions come out in the content that I'm sharing. And for you, it's because of you, and for all of you, I really have to thank you. Please, my focus here is to help as many people as possible go through a journey towards success. And I know it can happen, but certainly the ability to influence more people is helped by all of you. So please spread the word. And if you haven't subscribed, click subscribe right now if you will. All right, so with that, today's topic is I want to talk about one of the things that's coming up again and again in conversations is the whole aspect of changing. It's really an interesting thing because it can become a buzzword that we use over and over again, almost to the point that we kind of filter it out. But I was talking to my sister Gail and talking about the whole idea about change and making a case for change. And as always, she had a really great way of asking the question, saying, okay, so I think you need to start with what problem are you solving? And again, like so many things, it's so simple, and yet what a perfect question to ask is when we look at change and say, so why would we change? It's the reason change doesn't work a lot is because we don't have a clear case for change. So the case for change answers what problem we're trying to solve. And a lot of times we don't really take the time to do that. And so the conversation with my sister really helped me focus a message today around that and around the steps of change that I think will help all of you on your journey to success. And again, this success can be whether it's more successful career. Maybe you want to accelerate your journey in terms of that dream job that you've always wanted. It could be in terms of managing your company. So if your company is in a place right now, it's flattened out in performance, and you kind of want to give it a boost, then what are you going to do? How are you going to change that? It certainly works in relationships and health as well. So in your personal life, a lot of us are looking at things we want to change and drive a better result. So all those require a change process. And as my sister says, what problem are we solving, and what's that case for change? Now, in terms of case for change, and maybe giving an example that's very close to me and to share with all of you, is that in my past, I managed a global organization, and I've told you before, a large team of people, but we had made a commitment in our plan to have net income earnings of 1.2 billion. We also committed that we would cut over 250 million in expenses. So with 30,000 people and different ways of looking at the business performance, the tendency had been in the organization to always look at how do we deliver those numbers. So we almost started with those numbers as the output. And the organization previously worked hard to deliver those numbers, which then sort of created a tactical plan, but it's all based on cutting costs and trying to hit a commitment in terms of the bottom line plan for net income. Now that's extremely challenging and begins to build some issues that sort of permeate the culture, because it turns a culture upside down. Instead of being about being a growth business that attracts customers, what can happen very, very quickly when you look at what I call the output, the financial numbers. If you put those first and you create your strategy and your tactical plan to support that, you then start to do certain things when invariably you start coming up short. Now, the year that I'm talking about, we were heading towards a financial plan, which in our organization would have been disaster, of less than half, about 49% tracking to plan in bottom line profitability. And that just can't be. So we had to stop certain things. And as I mentioned before, I had a phenomenal boss with Deanna Oppenheimer, and she allowed me to look at the organization in a cultural way and look at and make a case for change, and then implement a change program. So it's with this experience as a backdrop that I want to share with you some of the steps that we took, and they certainly work for you and your company, but they also work for you in your career planning, you and your relationships, and you and your health. So the same sort of steps hold true. So what were those steps? And number one, we had to make the case for change. And usually the case for change is made for you. The marketplace, again, whether it's in a relationship or in your own business, the marketplace begins to make that for you. And it's only that level of dissatisfaction with that current results that creates the case for change for you, and says, if you're going to stay relevant, if you're going to survive, if you're going to be anywhere nearly as successful as you want to be, you need to change something. So case for change is made for you. And that's a very important part of it, because remember, the mindset trumps everything else. So if you have an organizational mindset in this example that I'm giving, that where you believe that our job is just to deliver that number, and you and sort of the output, and you believe that the best way to do it is just to really drive people a lot harder, you're gonna drive a ripple effect all the way down to your customers that I think is going to be problematic. So the mindset that says we can do something different, we can innovate, is absolutely crucial. And the mindset then brings you to a point of time when you make the decision to change. Okay, it's one thing to say, boy, we need to change. I need to change. I need to change. I need to change. Almost every CEO will make the presentation to shareholders that we need to make a change. We need to be much more innovative, and we need to find channels of growth. Well, easily said, but hard to do. You need to actually decide it. And again, that seems very, very obvious, but to use a different type of example, let's shift aside to maybe one of the most extreme types of change that a person can go through, and that's overcoming an addiction of any sort. And you know that only 4% of individuals who go to rehab for an addiction, only 4% are successful the first time. 96% failure rate. So when you dig into that and say, well, what happened to that 4%? Really what happened? Did they get a different counselor? Did they have different content? Did they have something that resonated? Some people go 6, 7, and 8 times before it really clicks. And so when you start asking people, what caused it? That's your success. What made you stop using that or doing those behaviors that were really damaging your life? And the answer, when you boil it down, is, I just decided it was time to stop. I decided I had too much to risk, maybe. Or maybe they say I decided that I would have lost everything that was dear to me, or I wouldn't be here if I didn't change. So I had to make that decision. So we give a lot of supporting material, supporting environment, supportive instructors to help individuals, but actually it comes down to the just stop doing it. And as simple as that sounds, there's nothing more difficult than that. So this decision, again, sounds very simple in a change or in a big case for change. And yet it's extremely difficult, because a lot of times we want different results, but we're not willing to commit to different processes, different ways of thinking. So decide, and that's step number 1. Then you say, okay, I've got the case for change. Mike, I've decided to change. Now what is it that I'm changing? And I would say, the key thing to know what you should change, because it's going to vary in obvious every circumstance. It's going to be different in every circumstance. But think about it for a moment. What's the very best way you can decide what to change? And the best way is to get the best objective point of view of where you are. You need to have an honest assessment of where you are, again, in a business setting or an individual setting. And the way to do that is, my advice is, the way to do that is to take an outside view in. So a lot of times we think of changing from the inside out. A lot of people think if we change the environment, it'll change. Change the relationship, I'll be happier. But if you're not happy here, if your core culture in a corporate setting is not good here, it's not going to have a good outcome. So changing from the outside in does not work, I can tell you that. You need to change from the inside out. And the way to do that is actually to get an objective view of your organization or yourself. Hopefully it can come from you, but it can come from your customers, or it can come from insights from your employees. But that objective view from the outside in is the very first thing that you want to focus on changing. Maybe it's your processes to make decisions. Maybe it's your structure is not quite right. On the personal side, maybe the energy that you're approaching conversations with individuals, maybe the short-term diets you've tried for health benefits are not working. The change, again, has to come here, and it's a wonderfully helpful thing if you can look at from the outside in and then objectively know, you know what I'm going to change? I'm going to change the way I fundamentally view the relationship of food in my life. I'm going to fundamentally view the relationship of individuals in my life, or again, in the corporate setting, I'm going to fundamentally view our organization's relevance to our customers. Very, very fundamental change. So outside in, and that's what you should change. Then the next question comes up, then great. Then how do I change? And that's an extremely difficult thing, because there's so many conversations on different ways to go about change. But the first thing I'll say is, it's more than about one thing. A lot of times people, when they talk about changing your life or your career or your organization, they will say to you, it's all about this or it's all about that. And the reality is, change is a process. It's not all about one thing or another thing. There's a process that you must honor in terms of really effective change. And for us, what it meant was looking at a future that we wanted, looking at the vision and what we wanted to mean to our customers and to the communities that we served. If you start over, then next stage was looking objectively at where we were in that day and what was that gap between the two. Very, very simple. Then you develop a strategy for closing that gap. Then you develop a tactical plan for delivering the strategy. Those are the steps that we took, and we fundamentally moved an organization that was going to make half of the profitability in the year that I'm speaking to an organization that exceeded 125% to goal the very next year. An organization that had employee satisfaction surveys of about 64%, the lowest I'd ever seen, to 92% within 18 months, the highest globally. So it makes a massive difference when you start talking about how to change an organization and how you look at this. And when we followed a process and we were patient and we went through several gateways to get the change done, it drove phenomenal results with 30,000 people. And all of a sudden, what we were taking as the input, which was the financial results, and we put them as the output, we were actually outperforming plan with far less effort, far less hassle. And oh, by the way, we cut those costs without impacting the relationship with the customer. So I know that process can work. I also know it works on an individual basis. You probably use different terminology around an individual basis, but whether it's your health or relationships, there is a process for change and you can do it. But I would advise the steps that I've suggested today as the way to follow that and begin that change. In fact, I'm working with a couple clients now that are having phenomenal results because we're following a very, very simple and effective process. The last thing I would say about this is that, look, that's kind of the role that I'm trying to play in terms of speaking to all of you through these channels. Those of you that I've speak individually, is the idea of being a coach or a mentor can kind of help that objective view and kind of help you see the world in a different way. Remember, you need to change something that you're doing, and typically it's change your mindset. And sometimes it's just a simple suggestion. We had one the other day where it was like the individual had a challenge. They had a problem. They said, here's what I see, here's what's happening, here's what's going on, here's what's going to happen, and here's the outcome. I said, well, what if you changed just slightly, have you looked at this a little differently? All of a sudden, 3 or 4 options appeared that had not really been accessible to this individual because they had believed they knew exactly how to do this. And they developed the better strategy. They developed the right answers, but me as the coach asked the question. So I would encourage you to find mentors and coaches that can help you do that. Certainly look to somebody to help you structure this process, but also play that role of saying, okay, have you thought of everything? And have you really objectively assessed this and gone through the very exact steps that I've just described to you? So with that, I want to sign off. And again, I have to end by saying thank you as well. Really am enjoying the time that I spend, although it's just speaking to a camera. I know that behind the camera, there's a lot of people and more people. Again, spread the word if you think that somebody could benefit from some of the words I'm sharing. And thanks a lot for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.